Like so many farmers that are beginning to get out in the fields, we decided it was time to start planting our ornamental crops garden. And there was a couple of things that we did in order to establish this theme of the garden before we planted. We've got some gabion baskets, which are kind of reminiscent of the farmer that used to harvest the rocks out of their field to protect their tractors. A lot of times they would collect those rocks and use them as a corner post for their fences. Nowadays, a lot of times gabion baskets are used in an ornamental way in their landscape as an accent or a featured hardscape material. Here we've used it just to feature the center, the axis of our garden. We also have some cultivators that we've used as ornaments to highlight our trellis where our hops will be growing. And then finally, we had an old tin whistle or culvert that we've actually cut up into several segments, and we're going to use these as planters. We're going to put some black sweet potato vine on the ground and have some chartreuse sweet potato vine coming up out of these. So a couple of things to do in order to prepare these. We don't want to fill this whole thing with potting soil. First, we need to stabilize this so that they don't tip over as we add weight into them. And we're going to use rebarb here and simply stick those around the outside. And then we're going to need to hammer those in. Once we have that stabilized, we're going to then use some pots to fill the space so we don't have to fill it with potting soil so much. You can also use pop bottles or milk jugs. And basically those are going to rest right in between that rebarb and fill a good portion of that so that you don't have to fill it completely with potting soil. Next, we're going to add sand around those pots to allow for better drainage. So after we have filled it with sand, the next step is to add potting soil, and we still have about 12 inches of root zone space that will be filled with potting soil. Whenever we're putting together a new container, we like to top dress it with some slow release fertilizer, and then as we plant, we will incorporate this into the soil. After cutting this culvert, we noticed that it had some rather sharp edges, and so to protect us and the gardeners and also our visitors, we wanted to make sure to cover that edging. And we've purchased a rubber trim that is actually made to cover metal edges, but if you don't have this, you can also use an old garden hose that you split down the middle, and you're simply going to feed this over that edge. Now, you want to start in the back and work your way around, so as people are viewing the garden from the front, they don't see any seams in that trim. I know a lot of farmers are excited about the recent rains, and as gardeners we are too. It did, however, delay the planting of this garden, and so you can see some of our plants are a little bit stretched and a little bit chlorotic because they stayed in pots just a bit too long in the greenhouse. However, now that we've got them in the garden, they're going to be just fine with a little bit of fertilizer. The other thing that we did is we started some plants in the greenhouse because okra and corn need a 60-degree soil temperature in order to germinate. We've spaced these plants a little bit further apart because we're going to actually interplant some seeds so we have some succession planting going on. The idea behind our ornamental crop garden is to display agriculture crops that are now being utilized in a more ornamental way, such as black cotton, purple millet, and sunflowers. The last thing that we did was we added some cottonseed hull mulch, again keeping with the whole agriculture theme, and this will be a nice protector from weeds, and we may have a few stray cotton plants that sprout up next to our black cotton.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel, and join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.